Welcome to the Real Life Podcasts with your hosts, leadership and personal growth author and speaker John C. Donahue and licensed psychotherapist Lou Carfisi. The Real Life Podcast is your weekly dose of motivation, encouragement, and direction to help you live your life at the highest level.
All right, well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Real Life Podcast. My name is John Donahue. I come to you from johncdonahue.com. Joining me on the other side of the internet is my good friend and co-host, Mr. Lou Carfisi from lifecarecounseling.net. How are you doing this evening, my friend?
I am just fine, sir. Just doing
Good.
well.
Well, it's Monday night, and that means we are recording our live show every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We do a live recording. It's where we record our podcast that we release that you can listen to on iTunes or Stitcher or Google, all the different places that you can listen to a podcast. You can find it there. But this is the unedited, raw, what you hear and see is what you get. And it's a great opportunity for you to chat live with us. And we do that all on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Real Life Podcast. And the one last thing that I would encourage you to do is to come out to our website, reallifepodcast.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can also find some other podcasts and some other blog posts that we have on the site. And we just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch or listen. And I forgot, we also have our YouTube channel. You could watch us live there as well. So tonight is going to be a great night. Lou is going to be talking about Notion. So let's go ahead and delve into that, my friend.
Okay. Do you remember Woolworths?
Department store?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Woolworths department store. They used to advertise, stuff, and they used to advertise notions. And I was like, I never knew what a notion was.
Huh.
And then I found out that they have something to do with sewing. So it's funny how we take the word and we use it for something like that.
Right.
But that's not the context, because this is not a snowing show. A snowing show. A sewing show.
It could be a snowing show.
Push the snow button and there'll be a lot of snow.
Yeah, I could do that. Hang on. Let me just this now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a snowing show. This is what you get when you ask for snowing. All right, we got to stop that. That's crazy. All right, so that makes sense, because when I was looking for images under Notions, a bunch of sewing needles and yarn and thread and all that popped up. So that now makes sense. But that's not what we're talking about.
Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're going to talking about notions that are in your head. Some of them of the preconceived type, some of them of the planted type,
Right.
and some of them of the type that you create because of whatever problem it is that you have. Naturally, no surprise, we're going to talk about psychology, but those are the areas kind of that this touches. They're very powerful because, I have a relative of mine who moved into this development, and he said, everybody in this place is nasty. They're mean. They're not nice, because someone told him before he moved into that development that the people in there weren't very friendly. So he went in there with this notion that everybody he spoke to, everybody he met, was just not friendly and not nice. And lo and behold, nobody was nice to him. Everybody thought, he was kind of not a nice person.
Right.
And I took that because it was so powerful. How can the way I feel about something change actually the way that people feel about me? It's very interesting. So if you have the opposite works too. If you have a notion about a place or a person that's positive, that person is going to meet you, and you are going to come out of a conversation or whatever it is with them thinking that you're a nice person, you're a good person. Right. So how we go into situations, what we have conceived in our heads, is really what we're going to project to people. This has a psychological component that is pretty strong, because it is behind one of the major things that's pretty new, I guess, in my world, which is called maladaptive schema. A schema, and I'm not going to go into the whole technical stuff about it, but what it is, it's a notion, but it's a notion about yourself. And that notion is created from experiences, or from trauma, or from both, or from bad parenting. You can create these notions about yourself. Having a notion about yourself that is not positive, and if it's not corrected, can stay with you for the rest of your life and impact you, which is why the thing that's the whole philosophy or theory based on maladaptive schemas is this idea that something happened that is wrong, and it happened early in life. And because it happened early in my life, it's printed and stamped in there with indelible ink, and it will be very difficult to get rid of it because it's in our subconscious. And then once in there, it starts to grow like a cancer. So all that to say that notions can be very powerful. But I use the word notion. I use the word notion to describe a maladaptive schema. So if you're interested in what this is, they're called early maladaptive schemas. The word early is because it usually happens early in childhood. And it really can happen anytime between birth and, now, yesterday.
Right.
But usually it happens when you're a child. The word maladaptive deals with what you know of the world. When you're a child, you're kind of limited as to what you know of the world. You're limited to whatever your parents create for you. So we just know the world is in a certain way. And we know that our parents are supposed to be nice to us, feed us, support us, make us feel good, love us, all that good stuff. And when it doesn't happen, we take the responsibility for that. We think it's our fault. And because we think it's our fault, it's not adaptable into our brains. It doesn't fit anywhere. It doesn't fit with good, support, love, and then this. So we can't assimilate it. We can't take it into us as who we are. We can't make any sense out of it. So it's like a sort of a mental free radical, if you will.
Right.
It needs to find a place, and it has emotions attached to it. So it goes into the subconscious, and it's stored in there. But what's stored is the emotion that you felt at the time when it happened, not necessarily the event that made it happen. So you create a notion about yourself that you have caused, or you don't deserve, or whatever the circumstance was, that you did it. It was your fault, because everything good is about you when you're a child, right?
Right.
Everything's about you. So if everything good is about you, everything bad's going to be about you.
Makes
sense.
The
The word makes sense. The word schema refers to something like a schematic. A schematic is like a computer program. It tells a piece of hardware what to do. This computer would be nothing without software. It would be nothing without a schematic telling the electricity what to do, right?
Right.
So this maladaptive schema that's in your head says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. You remember how you felt when this happened? Well, I'm going to tell you how that felt, and I'm going to make you remember it by running this little computer program in your head that makes you remember how you felt.
Right.
So you have early maladaptive schema. It was developed by Dr. Jeffrey Young. I don't remember exactly when it was developed. I think it was about a decade ago. It's starting to get popular. because it really is at the basis of, I believe, this is my opinion, of all mental health and all mental health problems. And it's why people go back. It's why people like me go back into people's histories and find out what it was that's happened to them and how that affects them to this day. So what do you think?
Well, it's fascinating. It does harken back to a time when we were talking, and you described it really well, that your brain has, it fires off neurons, and it goes to memories, and those memories travel on a certain pathway, and it carves a path in your head. And when you talked about, it's a schema, it's running that program, I remember that you mentioned that, we have memories and we have those etched into our brains, and it's like it's creating that schema, that computer program, if you will. And that made sense. And that sparked a lot of, wow, that makes total sense. Certain things that happen when you're younger. There are things in my life that I remember that are really great memories, but there are some bad memories too. And I still go back to those memories. One time when I was really, really little, my parents had gone across to the neighbor's house while I fell asleep. I'm like, the neighbor's house was like 10 feet away, and I had fallen asleep for a nap, and they had just stepped over to the neighbor's house, and I woke up and my parents weren't there. And I can remember that so vividly. And it is one of those things where when I was older, I struggled with being alone because of that. And you're right, because it's something that happened to me really when I was really little, and it wasn't my parents' fault. I just happened to wake up, and it made such an indelible memory on me when I was a kid that it still affected me as I got older. So totally makes sense, and it rings true. So yeah, I completely buy into what you're saying. So what about someone?
When it's triggered, John?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, when it's triggered, you don't really think about when you were in your home at that time by yourself. You don't think about that event.
No, I just know that I not so much now, but back then I had almost an anxiety of being alone. So much so that I would have these nightmares of dying alone and being alone. My nightmare was I would wake up, I would be someone watching my funeral, and there'd be nobody in the room. That was the nightmare that I had for the longest time.
Right, and this is the whole insidious part of what I'm explaining to you, because it is.
Right.
It's almost like it's done on purpose to hurt us. What happens is you experience a trauma, and you have a great example. The trauma was you woke up and you weren't home, and there was nobody there. Right. There wasn't the people that you expected to be there weren't there, so you were traumatized. That trauma created the schema, right? So then from that point on, you became an antenna. That antenna is looking around for things in its environment to either prove or disprove the notion that is behind that schema.
Sure.
Now and I use the word notion a lot of times with my patients because I want them to understand that the word schema is kind of weird. It's hard to talk about schemas, but if you talk to somebody about a notion, it's like a point of view.
Sure.
So what that told you was that, number one, you will be abandoned. You are vulnerable. You're not safe. Okay? Now, it's not true because you were 10 feet away from your house.
Right.
But there you go. I mean, you were really not in trouble, but because it happened at an early age, it would traumatize you and created this schema. And then the antenna out to the rest of the world, because everything comes in through the senses. When something reminds you of that scenario, be it a smell, a sound, color of a room, anything can remind you of that, but you don't say, boy, I'm thinking about that time when I was alone. No, it reminds you of how you felt.
Right. Our life, the way that we see the world, especially when we're children. You know, mom and or dad, depending on the child's situation, you know, their parents love them, you know, home is a good place. You know, do we get that from the experience? Or are kids who are raised in homes that are maybe not idyllic, is it just one long train of maladaptive behavior? How do we get those preconceived ideas on what normal is, so which we can find maladaptive behavior that we struggle with? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I understand. There is no normal, okay? But we are hardwired to need a male and a female counterpart in our lives. We're hardwired to expect the male role in a human being's life, which is strength, protection, provision, all those nurturing things, support. We need a female for all the things that she provides: love, closeness, food, you know, sometimes right directly from the tap. It's
Right.
all kind of the way that we are wired as people. Now, you could argue whether that's spiritual, religious, or you can argue whether that's just, you know, from evolution. Whatever it is, in either case, we expect those in our lives, and we expect those figures to be kind and nurturing to us, because we're down here on a ladder that goes way up in the sky on development.
Right.
And in order to climb that ladder, you're going to need to know who you are and what the landscape is like, and be very confident and supported at each rung of that ladder as you move up it.
Right.
So if something happens, like you're missing a parent, if it's a single mom scenario where there has always been a single mom, it's different from that than when there was a man involved, and then the man leaves, the husband leaves, or the boyfriend, or whoever the situation is. And this is not judgmental. I'm not saying that it's bad and you do this and you're going to ruin your kid. I'm not saying any of that stuff.
Right.
But that's how we see it from that perspective of childhood. Now, being a child, we're so completely and solely dependent upon our parents, and they're the people in our lives that we depend on most for our self-esteem, our self-worth, and how to be whatever it is, the gender that you are. So you look for your father and how to be a man, or your mom to how to be a woman. You look at the relationship to see how a marriage is supposed to be. You feel part of the family, so you have that familial comfort knowing that there's a family behind you, and it makes more than just you. You're not by yourself. Do you understand?
No, totally makes sense. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So I have to plug this in if you just give me a minute.
Sure.
Because every time I charge it, it seems to lose its charge quickly.
Yes. Oh, the joys of live podcasting, everybody.
Crisis averted. Sorry.
All right, we're all good to go.
All good to go. It's live TV, folks.
Exactly.
So anyway, did I answer your question properly?
You did, totally. I totally understand. And you were going to continue with that because we've created the notions, and I think the next thing is probably how do we handle those notions?
Okay. This is a huge subject, one that we're never going to even we're not even at the top of the tip of the iceberg yet.
Wow.
But it's going to be something I'm talking about, because by the time it's all explained, the objective here is to help people to help themselves in understanding why they have bad behaviors. Now, we have to make that link, and we have not made it yet. So it does not mean that because John was left alone for just a few minutes, 10 feet away from his home, that it's going to forever ruin his life, because it doesn't work that way. It has to go through this this complicated process where we have created a notion about ourselves. That's why the whole topic here is notion. The notion
Right.
about ourselves is that we will be abandoned.
Right. It
And
wasn't
then
the
we
fact.
say, why?
Yeah, it wasn't the fact that I was abandoned and that created all this stuff when I was more of an adult going through adolescence. It was what I was doing to myself. I had created all this extra, I made the monster so much bigger in my head.
So you did that yourself?
I would think so, yeah. Well, yes, because I was reading into situations where things would happen and I would read that abandonment issue and put whatever happened in that situation, I would overlay it with that abandonment issue. And it felt like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it just got bigger in my head.
Well, it was planted there somewhere. We don't come out with notions in our head. We don't come into the world that way. They are created. In a sense, yes, your past experiences to that point probably helped it along. But when it was created, it wasn't your parents' fault that it was created. It was your assumption, because everything when you're a child is about you. So therefore, this abandonment means that I can't expect these people to be here for me all the time. Why? And therein lies the problem. Why? Because maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe there's something wrong with me. And then as the week after that happened, maybe someone did something that reminded you of the circumstance when you were alone or walked away, or did something that triggered abandonment, reinforced that schema, and now it's stronger. Therefore, the feelings about yourself because of that are stronger. Now, if you can imagine that happens with a bunch of different topics. It can happen with, maybe if you fall and nobody's there to pick you up, you feel unsafe. Maybe here you are, a little infant, and all you've been hearing for the first maybe, couple of 6 months of your life, goo goo gaga, and getting a bottle or, getting fed and all this nice stuff. And then all of a sudden your mom turns around, stubs her toe, and screams. Well, now wait a minute. Where'd that come from? It's something I did. So am I saying that if you yell at your child, you're creating a schema? Maybe. You're certainly setting the stage for it.
Right.
Because that behavior is not congruous with the rest of the events of your life to that point. So a 6-month-old doesn't understand that. Do they cognitively are they aware of this? No. This is why, another reason why this is so powerful, because it lies in the subconscious. And the subconscious is something that we don't necessarily have access to and we can't control. It's there. All kinds of stuff is in there. Stuff that we have no idea about is in there.
Right.
I think Timothy Leary tried to figure out what was in there, and with LSD. I don't think the result was real calm. There's all kinds of stuff in there because the subconscious talks to you in your dreams.
Right.
Right. It comes out, but it comes out in a lot of times in imagery, and in all kinds of ways that are not direct. So that is the notion. You have a notion. You, John, have a notion somewhere in your head that you will be abandoned. And the reason you will be abandoned is because you're not a very desirable person.
Right.
Now, do you walk around thinking that? Of course not. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But what it does is you feel the emotion during times when things trigger it. And sometimes it comes out at inappropriate times. Sometimes we don't understand why we're feeling a certain way. And I know that in everybody's life, there are times when you just walk into a room or you smell something or see something, and all of a sudden you'll get this rush of emotion. And you go, what the heck?
Right.
Why
Where'd
do
that
I
come
feel
from?
that way? Yeah, exactly. And that is what this is. The notion becomes part of who you are, and it becomes a voice. And as I said, this is only the first very small attempt at explaining this dynamic and this theory. Again, the purpose to help, so that you understand when you have a rush of emotion, it's not necessarily because you're crazy or because it's cold in the room or whatever. You're getting this rush of emotion because something is being triggered. And more than likely, it's negative, more than likely. Because
Right.
if it was good, it would be happy, and you feel good emotions, like when you listen to music, like you said before.
Right. So, what can someone do if they're starting to have those feelings and they think that they might be crazy, or they've heard this and they've thought, okay, that makes sense. What would the next step be for them?
Well, there is no cookbook answer to this. This is a piece of how a therapist would begin to take apart somebody's problem and be able to explain it to them. And the first step, as with anything, is to identify it. It's education.
Right.
And that's why I'm doing this. I'm educating people, educating whoever's listening, that if you have emotions or if you have some kind of behaviors that you don't like, they are probably maladaptive responses to maladaptive schemas. So there's no easy answer that I can say in 2 minutes that we can wrap it up and say, here's the prize. The piece of it is that I would like people to take away from this is real simple. It's that those emotional bursts, those behaviors that you have that you don't like and you want to get rid of, number one, you can get rid of them. And number two, they are caused by something deep down inside your subconscious, and they're not going to hurt you. They're just thoughts. So it's the beginning of understanding why you act the way you act, or feel the way you feel, or respond the way you respond.
That's excellent.
Don't be scared.
Right. Right. And that's where one of the things that I have learned from you, because we did talk a lot about some of those issues specifically, and it took me getting much more comfortable in my skin to where I didn't have that nightmare anymore, and we unpacked a lot of that stuff. But that took a lot of time, and it took a lot of conversations with someone like you. So if you're out there and you're questioning, start looking at the issues, and then maybe it would be worth reaching out to somebody like a Lou or Lou directly, which you could certainly do at lifecarecounseling.net, right?
Yep. I welcome that.
Sure.
And you can get a hold of me on Facebook through the Real Life Podcast, Facebook/Real Life Podcast, or you can send an email to questions@reallifepodcast.com.
Right. You could also reach out to me as well. Even though I'm more of a life coach, I can certainly help point you in at least the right next step. You can find me at johncdonahue.com, and we would love to help you in whatever way. Maybe you're not struggling, you think, with this issue. Maybe you have something else that you're dealing with. Lou and I are here to help. So whatever we can do, we would love to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out, and we'll certainly keep any information close to the vest. It's not something that we just go telling everybody. So you're really safe talking to Lou, and we're safe talking to me as well. So I think that should take at least some of the concern out of it. Lou, is there anything else you need to say?
Yes. Don't diminish your part in this, because dealing with someone who has a negative notion about themselves is a lot of the reason why people need life coaches, because they don't have enough confidence in themselves. They don't have enough. There's nobody leading them in their lives. And this is what those are some of the emotions that we feel about it. A life coach is a wonderful resource for people to go to bounce things off of. How can I do this? How can I be a better leader? Am I doing the right thing in life by doing X, Y, and Z? So both of those things are needed.
Right. I appreciate that. And that's true. And I've talked to a lot of people about a lot of different issues. And I think that what I do bring to the table is very valuable. But I also hold you in very high regard. So I certainly want to give you the props that you're due, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So with that, I think we've shared how you can contact us. Lou, amazing as always. We're just scratching the tip of the iceberg with notions. So I'm sure we're going to talk about this in different ways, shapes, and forms in the future.
Well, I want to expand it because there's so much to it. I wanted to present this first so that we can open the topic and then explain how to deal with it.
Right. Excellent. Great job as always. So with that, my friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen or watch, and make sure that you come over to reallifepodcast.com. And no matter what, try to find the real help, the real hope here at the Real Life Podcast. We hope you guys have a tremendous week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Real Life Podcast. Find out more information and sign up for the Real Life Podcast newsletter at reallifepodcast.com. You can also learn more about our hosts, Lou Carfisi at lifecarecounseling.net and John Donahue at johncdonahue.com. And remember, live your life to the fullest. And as always, we want to encourage you to choose to be awesome, because when you choose to be awesome, you will be. Have a great week, everyone.